It's been about a year since I started playing in the monthly International Duel Masters Cup online tournaments, or IDC for short. This is the place where the best of the best Duel Masters players clash, the titans of the TCG, and also idiots such as myself. In this 1 year of playing, I've made many mistakes, some worse than others, and in this video I wanted to go over and analyze the top 5 such misplays I've made in IDC. Number 5. This is round 1 of IDC 39 against a player going by 6-inch Piñata. I am playing a Nature Light Dark Water Survivor mid-range deck, and my opponent is playing Light Nature aggro, and the game is going pretty good for me. I am on 0 shields, but I have complete board control, including an 8000 power Ikaz who can block multiple times per turn. So here I do some Survivor shenanigans. I summon Smash Horn, which activates Factory Shell's effect, and I decide to fetch a Forbos. This allows me to get a Soul Swap from my deck to generate another shield via Sky Sword. And here's where my turn should have ended. See, swinging into a Holy Awe trigger here could be devastating, especially if coupled with other triggers, and there's no reason to do it. The whole point of playing Forbos here is that next turn I can proc its effect again and grab something like Holy Awe myself, clear the board and swing for the shields when it's safer to do so. But here's the thing, this game has been dragging on for so long, it was late at night, I was tired, already up 1-0, I knew I could just end this and go to sleep right now if I attack here. After all, there's 2 Holy Awe's in the mana zone already, what are the odds of hitting another one in shields, right? So I go in. And there's a Torkon. Alright, he has 2 creatures now, I only have 1 shield. Breaking into a Holy Awe now would just give him a direct path to victory, and there's even 2 chances to hit it. It's so risky to swing now. Surely I wouldn't do it. Surely I would wait until next turn and... Yeah, unfortunately I did end up attacking, and I did hit a Holy Awe, and I did lose the game on the very next turn. So, what did we learn from this misplay? Be patient. Yes, attacking there probably had a 90% success rate because hitting specifically a Torkon followed by Holy Awe is quite unlikely, but why settle for a 90% chance to win when you could make it 100 by just waiting 1 or 2 turns? Number 4. We've seen a misplay about attacking too early, let's look now at the polar opposite. This is a game from round 4 of IDC 37, I'm playing against Halfar piloting Fortress Burn, and I am on Light Darkness Fire Nature Survivor combo. The point of my deck is to combo out a big board, then take advantage of Gargantua's ability to break all shields in a single attack. And so far it looks like it's working out. I have a big board of 6 creatures, I got Gargantua in my hand by Factory Shell's effect, and I'm set up to win on my next turn. Or at least that's how the deck is supposed to play out in 90% of cases. But let's take a closer look at this board. Halfar played Bronze Arm Tribe and evolved it into Fighter Dualfang, which means he generated a lot of mana fast. He is now on 9 mana. And what is Fortress Burn known to do on 9 mana? Play Fortress Shell, of course. So I can't play Gargantua yet, but okay, now we can charge back up to 5 and next turn surely we can play Gargantua, right? No, of course not, because there's Miraculous Plague. Rewinding a little bit, I should know at this point that against Fortress Burn in this situation, I'm never ever playing Gargantua this game. That deck will just not allow me to go to 6 mana. But let's just look at this board for a second. I have 6 creatures, 4 of them can attack, and my opponent has almost nothing. Just go in, dude. It's so obvious looking at it in retrospect. What's more, my opponent's deck is known for generally being on the weaker side against aggression and wide boards, so why not use that? Why wait for a Gargantua play that will never ever happen when you could just attack now and take the win that way? Even next turn, after I see that I can't play Gargantua, I have 6 creatures that can attack and my opponent has 5 shields. Even a beginner will look at this and go, I should attack here. Sure, there might be 1 or 2 triggers, but I should still be able to win the following turn with the remaining creatures. Fortress Burn doesn't have good mass removal after all, so I just kept holding on, hoping that by some miracle I would get to 6 mana again, until my opponent eventually drew Holy Awe and cleared my whole board, and then the game was over. The lesson from this one? Don't overfocus on your deck's main win condition. Sometimes you can win by just turning creatures sideways. Number 3. Let's move on to this match against Solomon in round 4 of IDC 33. My opponent is on Rebirth control and I'm playing a Ruby deck out, the purpose of which is, as the name suggests, to win by decking out the opponent. And I'm very close to doing that. In fact, my opponent only has 10 cards in his deck, and this turn I play Belix to Slash Charger away one of them. Let's pause. By looking at my opponent's remaining cards, I knew I had this game in the bag. I mean, there's 3 removal spells which are useless against my deck which doesn't care about sticking creatures on board. There's a blocker, but I don't care about attacking. There's some Bronze Arm Tribes that would thin his deck even more just to die to my Bazagazio Dragon. Fourboss is generally a pretty strong card, but there's no useful spells it could get in this situation, and we're left with this Locomotive Verb which could potentially discard my Bazagazio Dragon and could be mildly annoying, so let's just get rid of it for good measure. And that's what I did. As you can see, I took this decision in about 5 seconds, and I immediately knew I fucked up. You can even see me here asking if I can take back the play, but in the end I decided to own up to the misplay. But why was this a misplay? Well, let's rewind a little bit. This Belix is not just a blocker, it allows him to get a spell back from his mana zone, which could be a lost soul to discard my entire hand, or even worse, what happened in the game, get back Soul Swap and swap in Pyrofighter Magnus, a speed attacker which returns to the hand after attacking, making him immune to my removal. So 2 attacks from the Pyrofighter later, I end up losing the game. The lesson here is, even when you know you have the game in the bag, take the proper time to consider all options. I knew I misplayed 2 seconds after I did it, so just 2 more seconds of actually thinking before I move would have won me the game. Number 2. This one is a little bit different. It's from IDC 35 round 5 against Xboom, playing Nariel Ika's Lock while I'm playing Fire Nature Rush, the fastest and arguably easiest to pilot deck in competitive Duel Masters. So what kind of misplays can you make with this quote-unquote easy deck? Well, before we dive into it, I need to set the stage. This is game 3 of our match, which means it's all up to this. From the first 2 games I learned that my opponent is playing many strong blockers such as Palaolaces, but most importantly, Ikaz the Spy Droid. So it's already an uphill battle for me. His deck is built to destroy Rush. If Ikaz hits the board, my deck is completely paralyzed. So I learned from the first 2 duels that I absolutely need to hold my removal spells, i.e. Volcanic Arrows, for when Ikaz gets played. Which brings us to this situation. I start out with Volcanic Arrows in hand, which is good, we're prepared, and I play Deadly Fighter Braidclaw. And my opponent here summons Belix the Explorer. Now, Braidclaw is forced to attack every single turn, which would send him right into Belix's jaws... tentacles? What even is this thing? Anyway, my Braidclaw would die is the point. So the play is obvious then, cast Volcanic Arrows to get rid of the blocker, right? It's just basic Rush gameplay, see a blocker, kill a blocker. But here's the problem, I know from my previous games I need to hold removal for when Ikaz hits the board. So what do? Well, I end up just playing Gonta and letting Braidclaw die. And from a certain point of view, this play makes sense. If Ikaz stays on board I lose, so I have to hold a removal for when Ikaz hits the board, right? Right? Well, yes and no. Here's another way to look at it. The situation we are in right now is, to put it simply, crap. My opponent's deck is meant to crush mine, he already got the ideal start. I'd say our win rate is probably lower than 10 to 20%. See, the thing is, if he's holding more blockers such as Pala or god forbid Ikaz, the win rate drops to almost 0, whether we hold the removal or not. The only scenario in which you win here is to pray that he doesn't have Pala or Ikaz or more Belixes. It's unlikely, sure, but it could happen. But if that's the only winning scenario, why are we not playing according to it? If the only way to win is he doesn't have Ikaz, why are we playing around Ikaz? Just blast that Belix, go for shields and hope for the best. Yeah, like 90% of the time it won't work out, but 10% of the time it will. And that's better than the almost 0% win rate the other play has. This kinda reminds me of that bell curve meme where level 1 is see blocker kill blocker, Level 2 is no, you need to hold removal for important targets. And finally level 3 is C blocker, kill blocker. In the end, my opponent did not have ECAs until way later in the game, but won regardless, at least partly because I went for the wrong line of play. Fun fact, I ended up winning that IDC tournament, so I guess it all worked out for the best in the end. Number 1. Number 1 is the semifinals of IDC 32 against Darksigner. I was on Ruby deck out and my opponent was on Lightwater Arizonius. I put this at number 1 because it was the first time I'd reached semifinals and I knew I had a very good matchup against the finalist deck, so I knew I had a very solid chance of taking the whole tournament home, as long as I could just get past this one game. Let's see how that worked out. We'll start from turn 5. I already slashed away 2 Warlord Arizonius, and we see another one hitting mana here. Opponent summons Petrova buffing Liquid People, and a couple of Cranium Clamps later we get our enemy to discard the final Arizonius, so I was feeling pretty confident at this point. The only problem? This Petrova keeps breaking shields. We just need to get rid of this Petrova and we can win. Fast forward a little bit and we have an Aqua Surfer hiding behind our final shield. Here I spent some time contemplating going for a Miraculous Meltdown. This card allows me to destroy all my opponent's shields, but keep in mind that I saw my opponent's deck and I correctly concluded that there's at least one shield trigger in there, so Meltdown is not an option. Okay, so then where was the misplay? Well, I know this Petrova was summoned like 4 turns ago and it's been a pain in the butt constantly breaking my shields, but do you remember what race it powered up? Opponent summons Petrova buffing Liquid People. That's right, it was Liquid People. That means that this Aqua Surfer here is sitting at 6000 power and can just attack over Petrova and destroy it. Knowing that, we have a lot of options here. We could snare the Belix to have a clear shot at Petrova coupled with maybe a Lost Solar or a Slash Charger, or we could even play a second Surfer to bounce the Belix and set up for a Meltdown victory with 2 creatures next turn. But of course, I forgot my Surfer is powered up, and under these circumstances my only play is to snare my own Surfer to buy time, which is just so much worse. But wait, it's not over. Fast forward a little bit and my opponent is forced to break the final shield. Aqua Surfer is out again, this time with a clear shot at Petrova, who is still buffing Liquid People 7 turns later. All I have to do is turn the Surfer sideways to destroy it. But of course I still don't remember what Petrova is buffing, so I end up wasting a very valuable card in Miraculous Snare and I end up losing next turn. Notably, I could have stayed alive next turn if I had that snare that I'd wasted, but it shouldn't have gotten to that point in the first place because this Surfer could have killed Petrova like 5 turns ago. The lesson for this one is, don't forget what Petrova is buffing, I guess? There's not much of a lesson here, but I had to put this misplay at number 1 because it's just so silly, it arguably cost me the whole tournament and it still haunts me to this day. So, what do you think? Would you have played differently in these situations? Probably yes, because you're not an idiot like me. Anyway, this video was very difficult to make, not only because of the research and writing required, but also because watching back some of these misplays for me was just so painful. So make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed it and would like to see more Duel Masters content. Take care.